Hi. Today I'm going to talk about another pair of books that I find to be better as a pair than singly. That being said, each one is an absolute joy and delight. Cannot recommend these books highly enough. They both came out at around the same time. The most recent one is Vladimir, um, and by Julia May Jonas, an American book. And then a few months ago, Love and Virtue came out. It's an Australian book by an Aussie writer, Diana Reid. And first of all, both their covers are tremendous. I think the Vladimir cover is just so fun to come across. This book wherever you leave it in the house is always a delight, and I don't think I'll ever get over that cover. It is sublime, and in fact, there is a short video that the publisher made about how they chose the cover, and I will add that below. The cover of Love and Virtue is also absolutely superb. The colors, the font, and the crest itself, I think, speaks so well, informs the book. The book, the story informs the cover so well. But also, there's a local bookstore that actually made badges from the crest. I only found out about that recently, so I missed out on that. I love that sort of marketing stuff. I'm a real sucker for it. And I'll also add a link to that very short video that the bookstore made with Diana Reid, and she's wearing the crest badge, which is fun. So to start with, I think it's obvious. I think it's obvious from the covers and maybe from my excitement that these are two books that are fun to read, and that may or may not be surprising to you because the subject matter is actually very serious. They're both campus novels. They both have female protagonists. They both deal with the themes of sex, power, consent, the Me Too movement, and and they deal with those themes extremely well, in great depth. But at the same time, the stories themselves are a wonder and a delight. And I was trying to kind of put my finger on why they were. And I would say they both have extremely clever and extremely witty protagonists who it's fun to spend time with them. And even when they are having a hard time themselves, they still have very vivid lives that it's a joy to share in. There's also a sense of unpredictability in both narratives. I found that even more so in Vladimir, but also in Love and Virtue. There's a sense that you're not going to come across many cliches here. Things are going to happen which will be understandable, but really unpredictable. So we're not in a world of crazy surrealism at all. This is the real world we're living in. But things people do and say are not necessarily what you might expect. So there's a sense of fun to that. Thirdly, I found that there's an excitement in both books because they're not didactic books about these heavy topics. They embrace the ambiguities and the gray areas, and by doing that, the reader is quite often, if not always as they're reading, trying to figure out what exactly is happening here, in the sense of morality, in the sense of who's the bad guy, who's the good person, who's the bad person, and that is somehow, it's almost like trying to solve a mystery that you obviously cannot solve, because in this, these situations are extremely complex. You're not going to get any easy superficial answers, but at the same time, it's the journey and is very enjoyable. And in Love and Virtue, in fact, the protagonist, Michaela, arrives at Sydney University, which is very familiar to me, actually, living in Sydney. She arrives as a first-year student, and she's boarding at one of the colleges. She's won a scholarship because she is unusually clever, very, very talented, and she takes a course in philosophy, and the course is on morals. And right from the very start, there's that interesting idea that you can see she's struggling with as she's, learning about the difficulty of pinpointing exactly what is evil and what is the right thing to do at any one time. They also both have killer endings. I'm obviously not going to spoil it for you. But you will not be disappointed upon finishing these books. I guarantee it. So I think I have gone, I'm just going to check my notes. I think I've gone through the similarities, all except for one which takes me into the books further, which is the fact that both of these books have prologues. And this, this really interests me, and I think adds a lot to the novels, even though the prologues are very short and not very complicated, but they serve as an introduction, and there's something quite theatrical in both of them. In the use of the prologue. For example, Love and Virtue, and again, there won't be any spoilers here, I promise. And the prologue in Love and Virtue is really 2 pages long. The last 2 sentences of the prologue, again, don't worry, this is the beginning of the book, read as follows. The whole evening seems suspended in a giddy, consequenceless haze, a night projected on a screen and reduced to darkness when they tumble into sleep. The clutch of their bodies, the immediacy of it all, for now, fades to black. And what that is that you're given a scene that is then faded to black. It's almost as if it's a play or a film, which I absolutely love. And then the first chapter begins with, the simple story, the seemingly simple story of Michaela arriving at university with her mother. She's come up from Canberra. They're very excited. Her mother settling her into the dorm. And I think if you're not Australian, I think reading a campus novel that's set in Sydney, Australia is going to be great fun for you. There's also there are a lot of details about the kind of students who live in the dorms. It's quite different in many ways from the American college culture. And you'll also be able to go, to someone's apartment, someone's flat in Bondi, and you'll go to the beach, and you'll enjoy that aspect of the Sydney life. But back to the prologue, there's an interesting one in Vladimir as well, and now. Vladimir is quite different because the prologue matches the absolutely the first person, while in Love and Virtue it doesn't. But apart from that, what the prologue does is it introduces a scene taken out of context in the very same way that Love and Virtue did. And you see that scene out of context, and then the story starts. So once again, I think it's a wonderful way to start a novel, and definitely shows what great craft is involved in these two books. Generally speaking, I really don't want to say very much more about what happens in the books, other than it's very, the blurbs will tell you, and it's also very easy to imagine. Everyone knows the scenarios that occur between, students, and also between professors and students. I will say, though, that the difference between the two protagonists is an age difference. And I'm reading these two books as a 53-year-old woman. Michaela is 18. So that's a big difference. And Michaela is a first-year student. And the protagonist in Vladimir, again unnamed, she's a professor of English. So there's so much of interest in that difference, and I do feel that Julia May Jonas is playing on that a lot within her book, within Vladimir, because the first person voice of the unnamed protagonist is extremely honest. And I would say that reading her thoughts throughout the book is similar to what you might go through when, you have a lot of inappropriate thoughts throughout the day. We all do. We don't act on them. We certainly don't voice them. We don't act on them. We have access to this protagonist's thoughts in that sense. And we also see how she censors herself and adapts herself to her young students and how they view her and their expectations of her as, as a possible mentor. And she's married, and she has a daughter who is, an adult, and, her daughter is grown. She's a lawyer. She has a partner. She's queer. She has a partner. She lives far away from them, and they the youth of her daughter and the youth of her students it comes into play as the protagonist tries to decide where she stands within her marriage, within her career, and within her personal desire. And again, I would like to quote from the prologue, because it starts, the first line is just so astonishing. It's the very first line. When I was a child, I loved old men, and I could tell that they also loved me. It's really something I haven't come across before. And then at the bottom of the page, she says, what I like most about old men now, however, and the reason I often feel that perhaps I am an old man, more than I am an oldish white woman in her late 50s, is that old men are composed of desires. Everything about them is wanting. They have appetites. They want to be stimulated. Apart from the fact that it's the most kick-ass beginning, it also immediately sets the tone for how the story will progress, and how and what sort of a woman this protagonist is. It's very exciting for me as a woman, just a few years younger than the protagonist. I don't think it makes a difference. It's very exciting for me to see her portrayed in this particular way. She's multifaceted, and the ambiguities, the ambivalence, it's all there in very, very rich story, much as it is in Love and Virtue. Love and Virtue gains its interest by setting up the protagonist Michaela with a friend she meets at the college, at the dorm, called Eve, who is also extremely clever, talented young woman, but quite different. And that's where the fun lay in it for me, to see how they take off side by side, and deal with issues, see issues in different ways. So if you're looking for a good read, I recommend both of these books. I couldn't recommend them more highly, and it's actually been a real pleasure to go back to them in preparation for this video, and I realize how much they have, in a second quick read to offer me. So happy reading, and perhaps next time I'll do a wrap up of the books I've read last month. I'm also thinking of doing a little bit of poetry, but if people start look, if you have any preferences, or if there's something you want me to talk about, please put it in the comments. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.